We're not ready yet.
Speak for yourself, David.
Are we ever ready?
Oh, no, gosh.
We just let the spirit lead us.
I do like that you're rocking an official Yeti this time. That makes me... And one of my favorite color combinations of all time, orange and green.
Really?
It's a very, like, Scooby-Doo... like kind of an
Mystery
October,
Machine.
autumn. Yeah, like it's... I just love the way that these two colors look together. Specifically this orange, and which is... I believe that's a king crab orange and canopy green.
Wow, that's impressive that you know...
Dude,
the
amount of Yeti stuff that I have is absolutely unhealthy.
I was going to ask if you grew up with the 256 variety of Crayola crayons, so you knew all the little nuance of colors as opposed to just the 24 pack.
I did.
I had the 256 as well, I'm pretty sure.
It's pretty great. But Yeti has very specific color names, and one of my all-time favorites was the canopy green, and because it was one of the limited series, and I admittedly did not buy enough canopy green things because now I'm mad that it's not available. Now they often bring stuff back. Like King Crab was so popular that they were like, all right, we're gonna bring it back because you guys yelled at us enough.
Are king crabs orange?
Yeah, so Alaskan king crabs, they're very orange. And,
Did not know this.
Yeah.
Okay, learn.
Like, because you see like a lot of crabs, they kind of have that kind of pale pinkish little hints of orange. They have that, but king crabs, Alaskan king crabs, are aggressively orange.
Okay, did not know that. See, when you put those two colors together, the first thing I think of is UTD down in Richardson. It was my friend.
Is that their color scheme?
Yeah, their colors are super bright and aggressive, and one of my friends from high school went there, and he had a truck that was about the same color. And they're the UTD Comets. So we just
violently
took to
orange truck.
Yeah, we just took to calling his truck the Flaming Comet as he was driving around. But he wouldn't. This is my friend who wouldn't drive on the highway until he was probably 20. So the Flaming Comet was driving in the access road at like 50.
It feels like that's a bit of an ironic name now.
Yeah, it was very ironic.
Oh, goodness gracious. Yeah. Well, hey, it's VBS week.
VBS week, which is why, I'm still
welcome
in,
to Sunday
sweats.
Plus.
Yeah, welcome to Sunday Plus. Episode 22.
22.
Feeling 22?
Yeah, that's good. So VBS is one of those... it's funny. I was just talking a couple days ago because Caitlin was basically living up here.
Yes. Yeah,
like she
Caitlin
left
Maxwell's
here at like 3 a.m. at one point, which, good Lord, that's a lot of dedication.
If you are listening to this, you should just insert yourself into Caitlin Maxwell's life at church and volunteer for Children's Sunday School.
Do not ask her if she needs help.
Yes,
just tell her you are helping. She needs help, as we all do, and she will not accept help unless it is forced upon her.
She's kind of a superhero.
She is a superhero. Yeah. So I was saying that for Caitlin, like this week is her Super Bowl.
Yes.
Which it's one of those things because we were talking on Easter that like that's our Super Bowl, and then I would actually argue that if the church had a Super Bowl, that would be Advent.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Christmas Eve specifically.
Because there's so many events.
But for whatever reason, that's the church's Super Bowl. Yeah. Church clergy and leadership, people who lead on worship, it's Easter. For children's ministry, it's VBS.
Always VBS.
Although
the family Christmas Eve service would come to a close second, I think. It's just not 4 days long.
Yes. Yeah, it's pretty intense. But that's also something that's specific to here.
Yeah,
not every church does that.
Not every church does that.
Pretty much every church does a VBS, or some of them, which I actually agree with this, they call it VBC, Vacation Bible Camp.
Nobody wants to go to school.
It's less about that. Okay. I actually think that the just pure structure of how it works is far more camp-like.
Right.
The things that you're doing, way more campy. Like you're taking, I mean, the science room, they were doing those things with like trying to get the marbles down the little things.
Oh, I didn't even see that. I heard about a magnetic compass or like magnetize the sewing needle or something today.
Yeah, these are things you do at camp. You go into and you learn dance moves to like you don't do that at school.
So as we've talked about, church things become like the more churchy the word gets, the less cool it becomes.
Oh yeah.
So a few years ago, I was driving by and it was Chase Oak Sloan Creek campus that had VBX. and it was it's Vacation Bible Experience. It's just camp.
It's not even how that word is spelled.
Right. So camp is apparently too churchy now, I guess.
Oh my gosh. Stop it. Just stop it.
Yeah, VBS is one of those things that I'm probably spilling way too many beans here, but like I have a love-hate relationship with VBS because
I think anybody who does it has a love-hate relationship, but about, I don't know, 6 months from now, you're gonna be like, oh man, I can't wait for VBS.
VBS is amazing. Yeah, I'm usually the one that's like, I remember the first year I got to Creekwood, there was so much stress. I got here in January, so they're already kind of ramping up and planning for 6 months from now, VBS, and there's so much stress. And for whatever reason, this was the thing that passed my desk every day. And I just remember like voicing out loud, maybe we should just cancel VBS and do something else. And everyone looked at me like, who is this new guy and how fast can he get out of here? So
that guy's fired.
Right. So usually I'm like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? And then we pass like the opening worship of day one. I'm like, this is the best thing that we've ever done.
Oh, it's gonna be a good week. If today is any indication,
this is
gonna be a really good week. So I'm excited about moving forward with it. I just love now granted, it's been a while since I've been up front, like this year, and I'm literally just the guy behind the AV booth, just making all the magic happen.
That's
with
right.
Lighting transitions and everything on the screens and making sure we have everything and it sounds good. But yeah, I'm fine with that for now. This year, that's my role.
I had 9,000 steps by the end of VBS, and I barely left the sanctuary because I got put at leading music again this year, which is the second time I've ever done it. And it's really a blast because it's like the most energetic and wild.
Well, yeah, it's you're taking like an aggressive Zumba class for 3 hours straight.
Pretty much, yeah.
With short breathers in between, and then you have to like maintain this level of energy to match that of like 6-year-olds.
Right.
So you're like, what?
I always compare it to like, when we used to do 3 services, by the 3rd service, I've already given the sermon twice. I know what's coming. I'm trying to have the same punchline for the jokes. I'm trying to have the same energy. It's kind of like, all right, I know what's coming. And I have to remember, this is their first experience. So like every crew that comes in have to recognize like, okay, this is their first experience of music. They're very excited about it. I can do the power shuffle for the 11th time. It's fine.
I don't know. For me, the only way, so like in times where I've done multiple worship services and I'm leading the same songs, I don't know. My approach has always been do it better than you did the last time, and like really lean into something either more emotional than the last go through, or something like tap into something new, or let some different aspect of your own life motivate the song. And so that's always been my approach, to try and keep it fresh, try and make sure that the people who weren't at the last worship service are getting an equally unique experience without compromising quality.
I do think there's something, I don't know if this is the same within the musical realm, but from the preaching realm, there's usually something that comes out in the early service and it kind of convicts me or moves me or reminds me of something. So then the next crowd gets a slightly different message because I've recognized like, oh, I left that out. Or, wow, okay, I didn't think about that. That's not really what I should have said. And it's a refining aspect.
I've heard you do that a number of times, because like I would say about 50% of the time I'll sit in on 8:30 and jot down some of my notes and stuff, and sometimes there's, in fact, I would say most times there's like little sections where you'll bring something up at the 11 that you did not bring up at 8:30. Like, I mean, for example, you referenced something that I said just in context of the sermon, and it was like, oh, it's cool, yeah, because it keeps it specific and unique to that.
It's organic,
service.
yeah.
Like, I forgot to ask you a few weeks ago, did you mention Maslow in both 8:30 and 11?
I've slept multiple times since then.
I need to go back and
think
watch.
I did.
Okay.
I think I did it at 11.
Because this is a weird, trippy thing, and I need to go back and look at this, because when you did, I kind of freaked out because, and I am not making this up, which is why I need to go back and rewatch the 8:30. During the 8:30, at one point, something triggered, and I was trying to remember who Maslow was.
Okay.
And I was Googling Maslow during the 8:30, And then you referenced it at 11. I was like, I don't remember him saying, wait. And then I started to convince myself, no, he probably said it. And I just was like, oh, yeah, Maslow. And then Googled it. But I need to go back and look because
I was going to say, I don't know now.
It freaked me out when that happened. I was like, what's happening right now? And then I just, for a minute there, I was like, was David reading my mind during, like, did I say something? Like, it was super
Have you ever
weird.
seen the movie Inception before?
I have.
How long were you asleep before you started Googling Maslow?
You know, that's the whole thing. You never remember how you got there.
Right.
You just remember
wait,
once you're there.
Right there, yeah.
We'll get back to you on whether or not David said Maslow
right.
at 8:30, and then it'll be really weird when we find out he didn't. You kind of talked a whole lot about saying yes to things and how that for me, listening to your sermon, like just saying yes was what kind of led you into these moments that shaped you and created this reality and helped you meet the right people. And it was just this consistent story of saying yes to things, even when you're like, I don't want to hang out with these people.
Why would I hang out with the
But you
undergrads?
do it anyway.
Yeah.
And then it turns out like, oh, I met some really great people.
Right.
Really had some really cool experiences.
But I think that notion of making yourself vulnerable it's the same thing that the old example of, you can't be generous with a closed fist, which when you're generous, then you have the open hand that you can also receive as well. So I think there's a vulnerability that comes from just saying yes that
Vulnerability can't happen without availability.
Right, exactly, yeah. And I think there is a caveat of I distinctly, and I think I said this, like I was praying for friends. And here was an opportunity to go and meet people. And so it seemed incredibly counterintuitive to pray for friends and want God to deliver this package over here without actually saying yes to going toward the package. I think that's where I hear people get frustrated with either their own prayer life or the stereotype of, well, if you trust God, everything will work out. Well,
that is one of the most annoying things that somebody could say to you. Just like, get out of here, man.
Right. But if I'm praying for a great experience, if I'm praying for wisdom, and here comes this person who can challenge me and bring me more in depth in my spiritual life, and I'm just like, no, I'm good. That's fine. Right. So it's counterintuitive what I'm praying for to not say yes for. Now, if I was praying for friends and someone was like, hey, I've got a bunch of cocaine that I'm going to give you, maybe not don't say yes to that. So it's being vulnerable. I think it's vulnerability to the things that you want, like the things
sure.
Yeah, that's what, and so often we either don't want to put in the effort or it's not in the package we expect it to come in. I mean, I don't know how many of us have ever had like a really good friend that when the first time we met them was like, no, that's not going to work. Yeah. But you eventually around them enough or you say yes or something. And all of a sudden you realize like, oh, okay, wouldn't have expected this, but pretty cool.
So you gave like a Cliff Notes version or a Spark Notes version, whichever was your poison. I was a Spark Notes guy.
I started with Cliff Notes and then Spark Notes kind of became more popular.
Yeah.
I think it's online is the reason why.
I haven't gone to either of those websites in 20-something years.
It's been a minute. Yeah.
I assume they still exist.
I'm sure they do.
But you were given the Spark Notes version of kind of your journey and how you came to find yourself in ministry versus what was your original major?
Biology. I wanted to do pre-med. Yeah, medical school. I wanted to be my braggadocious moment is when there was I always wanted to go to A&M. I just loved football games. I loved the environment, like the
Kyle
traditions.
Field is nuts, man.
It was amazing. And then for whatever reason, junior year, I went down and took like the official tour as opposed to just being in the environment and walking around for something clicked. And I was like, I do not want to be with 39,000 other people on this campus.
The time when you were in school, A&M they hadn't cracked the top 10 of most populated schools yet. I think they were like number 15 or 16 because when I went to college, A&M was sitting around that, and UT was number 1.
Yeah.
Now UT is like number 11, and A&M's number 2.
Well, and A&M's going to stop admitting so many students because it's so full. But it just was one of those things of like, okay, I appreciate the big school atmosphere, but it's just it just felt overwhelming. So all of a sudden, my college plan was wrecked. And my cousin had gone to this place in Dallas that did aptitude testing to help you figure out, like, what are you really gifted at? What's your major supposed to be? And then they would recommend colleges based off that. So I went and did like 4.5 hours of testing, both manual dexterity and
Gosh, that sounds
mental
brutal.
and all.
4.5 hours?
It was not the most fun thing. Like some of the things were games, which was kind of cool.
Because I love self-discovery as much as the next person, but 4.5 hours...
It was pretty extreme. Like in this Dallas high rise, it was kind of weird for a junior in high school. But went there, and so afterward, the guy's analyzing my results and comes and says, "You've got the highest aptitude for surgery that we've seen this calendar year. You should check out TCU. It's a great private school education. They've got a great it's like underrated biology department. And at the time, TCU was way more affordable than it is now." So we drove over there. Like I went to a Mustang Monday to check out SMU, thinking, okay, well, it's close to home. This will be fun. And it's a beautiful campus, like objectively. And for some reason, I stepped on campus that day and was like, this is the ugliest place I've ever been. I don't know what it is. Because every time I've been back, I was like, what was I thinking? This place is gorgeous. The next week, I went to a TCU Tuesday. And I didn't even make it out of the car. I literally opened the door and felt this sensation of like, this is where you're supposed to be.
That's how I felt when I went to SFA.
Yeah.
Because I did campus tour at UNT, and like I was like, oh, it's cool. It just felt like a parking lot,
right,
with the occasional boring tree that I don't know. And then I went to SFA, and I'm like, oh, this is the place.
I've never been to that campus.
Oh, well, it's
I
East
bet it's
Texas.
beautiful.
I mean, it's literally where the School of Forestry was invented.
Okay.
So, it's not quite hill country, but a lot more hills out there than in Dallas. Trees everywhere. However, spring semester when pollen comes out, I mean, everything is caked in yellow, just for about a week.
Fun. That's
Everything's
awesome.
caked in yellow. Thank God my allergies were non-existent back then. I'm sure if I went out there during that week as an adult now, I'd just be like, my eyes would just puff up and I'd be blind. But SFA, Nacogdoches, man, beautiful campus.
I bet it's pretty. Yeah. So anyway, that was my original track. I did a year and a half, 2 years. It was weird in that I had been told my senior year of high school, an associate pastor pulled me out after I'd given a sermon as part of Senior Sunday and said, like, you really need to be a preacher. And I literally responded, and I'm so ashamed of this now, but I responded, I was like, y'all don't make a lot of money, do you? And she was like, no, but it's worth it. So that was like in my head. I knew I was going to get plugged into the campus ministry because that youth group experience had been so good. And I got so involved there that I became one of the student leaders on campus in the Wesley Foundation. And I just found that I did pretty well in biology and chemistry and all, but as well as I was doing there and I really enjoyed it, I just felt gravitated toward, and so when I was selected to be a peer minister, not only was I only one of two freshmen, but I was the youngest of the two freshmen. And the way they picked what they were in charge of was by seniority. So the first people were like, I want to do fellowship events and mission events and, intramurals or something. And by the time it gets to me, they're like, well, David, you get to lead worship. Like no one else wanted to do it. And so that turned out to be a really great thing because all of a sudden I got like this one-on-one time with the campus minister to plan worship and see what went into that and like develop new ideas. And he was a really outside the box thinker. The first worship service I ever went to, the associate director was leaving to go take another job. And she claimed that she had never eaten ketchup in her life. So Brian did communion with French fries and ketchup so that Melanie would be forced to try ketchup.
Hot take, ketchup is the most overrated condiment, period.
I agree with that. Fully agree with that.
It's just like, it's a sugar bomb. It's got a lot of sugar in it, and like it's just kind of a less than awesome version of tomato flavored-ish.
Well, I say, why stop at ketchup if you can go to barbecue sauce?
Barbecue sauce is the superior ketchup because it's a similar thing with just a little more zip to it, and it's way better. But yeah. Anyway,
so anyway, that was started hanging around.
So hang on, you were the worship leader, as in you were the guy with the guitar saying, "Hey, let's sing along, everyone."
Eventually, yeah. So
I always find it hilarious and a little weird when I find out somebody that is the lead pastor or the teaching pastor, and they're like, oh yeah, I used to do this job. Andy Lewis was one of those guys where he was like, oh yeah, I used to be a worship leader. I'm like, you did not. What are you talking about? No. Jason McConnell was one of those guys. He did
I
it
didn't even
sometimes.
know that. Wow.
Or maybe it was just when Andy and Jason were
when they were doing Wellspring together.
Yeah. Because I think it was just Andy that was doing that. Although Jason, I think, does play a little bit of guitar. He may have done it just before then. I don't know. I feel like I've heard him say that.
Yeah.
Need to ask him. But I always get weirded out when I find out that it's like, wait, you were the guy with the guitar, the acoustic guitar guy?
Well, so it started out as I was just helping to plan worship. And then when I was a sophomore and I was still in charge of worship, a guy who was 2 years ahead of me at Allen, who went to my youth group, his name was Aaron, transferred to TCU from Morris, a small Methodist college out in East Texas that doesn't exist anymore. So Aaron transferred in, and Aaron is one of those guys, kind of like you, that owns like 17 guitars and could just play the lights out of all these things. So I knew Aaron. I helped him get acclimated to campus, and so we were just in the room that he was renting, and he had all these guitars, and I said, yeah, I really love to learn guitar. And the rationale behind wanting to learn guitar was I thought it would help me meet girls, and I could lead worship. So,
the less worship thing for me when I was first learning, I was like, girls are going to like this.
I never once have attracted a girl by my guitar playing skills. I wrote songs for Lindsay when we were in college, and I think she suffered through them because she loved me. They're pretty bad. But so I started playing on this old blues guitar, and he taught me to play learning Christmas songs because I would know the rhythms.
Christmas songs are like the hardest ones to do.
Yeah.
They're so hard.
But then eventually it was like, all right, if you can do some of these, you can play anything Chris Tomlin has to offer. So sophomore year, that I got up with Aaron, and then Aaron graduated because he had transferred in as a junior, I guess. And so 2 years. So by the time I was a senior, I was the only guy up there with a guitar. And it was bad. I mean, it was like objectively not great. But I was the only one who had a guitar and the only one who would do it. So
I love that.
It was fun. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
That's hilarious. I'm trying to picture young David with an acoustic. Like,
well, you're also talking.
You know the words. Come on.
You're also talking about there is a chapel in the Wesley Foundation building, but no one ever used it. They would use this big room, and they're like pleather couches, an old bookshelf that's got hymnals from like the 30s, an old tube TV, and a fireplace. And then there's me with I'm talking laminated lyrics, like yeah. So there's an overhead projector where somebody is changing the laminated sheet to project on the screen.
Did you ever have those green spiral songbooks where?
Oh yeah,
they had the little ichthus fish on it on the front, and that was my first introduction to worship music.
Did you jam with One Tin Soldier?
One Tin Soldier, Blind Man.
If I Had a Hammer.
As the Deer.
Oh, As the Deer. Yeah, I can still rock that one.
Ooh, man. Classic, old school. Sanctuary was the one that my youth group growing up, everybody was obsessed with.
Yours
that song.
And everybody's.
Yeah, Sanctuary was that easy one. And like even at my youth group, I'm sure this was a thing that we thought was original, but we would write our own verses to Sanctuary that because it's the easiest song in the world to write for. But like we had 4 or 5 verses that were written by members of our youth group, and we used them regularly.
That's pretty cool, though. I mean,
I could still
didn't know anybody
remember
did
some
that.
of them because we did them so often, and I think about them, and then I look up the official lyrics. I'm like, wait a minute, what about that? Oh yeah, we wrote that.
We sang the same verse over and over again, like sometimes 12 to 15 times.
We're gonna keep doing this until somebody's crying.
That's right. Someone's got to cry. Someone's got to fall on their knees. Who's accepting Christ today? We're just gonna keep on going. Yeah.
And then you always have to start off with "Waves of Mercy."
Okay.
And then Lord, I lift your name on high. And then the cool ones, because it's literally the same song, you would just do Waves of Mercy into Lord, I lift your name on high.
There you go. I was thinking, was that every step I take? That's Waves of Mercy. Okay, yeah. Lord, I lift your name on high was...
It's the exact same chord structure, exact same tempo, exact same everything. Yeah.
Mashups before mashups were cool.
Not sure they were ever cool.
You didn't watch enough Glee, John. Come on.
I did watch Glee.
The mashups were pretty awesome.
Those mashups were good.
I mean, when you have like those people doing mashups, it's pretty awesome.
I did mashups a few times, and like back when I was gigging, and I got over it pretty quick. I was like, this is not as cool as I think I want it to be. I'm just gonna go ahead and stop doing this. Oh, goodness gracious! So, you switch from pre-med to ministry, and yours was study of religion.
Yeah. And at TCU, that really meant the sociology and psychology of religion. So it was religion as opposed to like Bible class.
Now, there isn't necessarily a singular major you have to have in order to become like an ordained minister. Like you could do theology, you can do study of religion.
In undergrad, you can major in basket weaving or kinesiology if you wanted to, and as long as you go to get accepted into seminary.
Or what Alex did, he finance.
Finance, I think, yeah. He's doing an MBA right. He's finishing up an MBA right now. Which when I was looking at med school, I remember talking to a whole bunch of people that said, don't major in biology because when you apply for med school, everybody has majored in biology. Major in French or something like that. And they were dead serious about medical schools wanting well-rounded people. So you have to pass your MCAT. You obviously have to know what you're talking about. But they wanted like human beings as opposed to robots as doctors.
Oh my gosh! So to make something interesting about you, other than the fact that I do doctor things.
Yeah, or so that you have empathy. So if you are a history major on some level, you have empathy with the people that you're coming from because you've examined historical problems in the world or something. So yeah, it was a whole thing that this guy came and gave a lecture about, and all of us are sitting there and we're all biology majors. Like, well, we chose wrong, I guess. Let's better go do ministry then.
Do you hold on to anything that you learned in those 2 years?
I still remember quite a bit. There are just different things. Like even today when I was taking my girls shopping after VBS and we went to Ulta Beauty, and I know next to nothing about skincare or any of that. But one of them picked up a product and it was like niacinamide. And I was like, is that like niacin, the vitamin, but with a chemical compound of like, and I was trying to remember the whatever the "ide" is, the combination of carbon and hydrogen on the end of this. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, well, if it's an ate or an aid or an ide or whatever, it has a different chemical compound that you can figure out the shape of the chemical compound and how that would bond with other things and interact with them. And she's like, how do you know that? And I said, I really don't know, but I'm pretty sure Dr. Nielsen taught me that.
I really wish she would have just said, shut up, nerd. I think that would have been the appropriate response.
Yeah, I think the most formative lecture was interesting. Dr. Couch did a lecture, and it was all about some different anatomical and physiological differences in like males who identify as gay versus males who identify as straight. And it was very interesting seeing this kind of brain chemistry, and there are different things that are larger or smaller in the way that information flows, and nothing that was either just like completely affirming or completely damning. It was just this very intricate, the point of it ended up being the smallest little twitch, like the smallest little thing, how perfectly wired the body is and how sensitive it is to change. And so when you change one little thing on a genome or one little thing on some molecule, it affects all of these other things.
It's like the butterfly effect, but internalized with the human body.
So it was a really interesting way now that I'm in, dealing with much more existential things than the human body, of thinking about the interconnectedness of the world and how the spirit works, and how we think of the body as just this mechanism, this machine, but it's so much more beautiful than that. And so when we try and make the world this just enlightenment machine that works on just physics, and then we recognize there are quantum physics and the connection in between everything, and even just the spiritual connection between two people, I still hold on. Like biology really set the course for awe and wonder for me.
I mean,
It was really
clearly, because it didn't take much to get you down your own rabbit hole of like, I remember all these things and how intense and how it affected. Like that's wild.
It was really, I mean, I wouldn't said it right. I wouldn't have known it then, but it was really a spiritual experience, and everything we did, that I just fell in love with how complex we are.
We are extraordinarily complex creatures, and the more I learn about the human body and how we process things physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, like just it is an impossibility to try and wrap up just what life, how you could encompass life into a box and say this is what life is.
And I would say that, so someone asked me the other day, this a couple weeks ago, someone asked me, what was the moment in which God just clicked? Like, did I have a moment like in academia? And or I think they asked me general, and I said, it's weird. I never, like, I had plenty of Bridgeport camp experiences and mission trip experiences.
Mountaintop moments?
Like mountaintop moments. My church experience was great and I loved it. But I remember sitting outside of the religion building, and someone introduced me for the first time to the difference between religion that is exclusive, inclusive, or nihilistic. And nihilistic is just nothing matters. There's no truth. And exclusivist is we hold the truth and everybody else is wrong. And then there's an inclusive strain that is, well, we believe this is true, but that doesn't discount that anybody else has a strain of truth or a version of the truth or something. And I really think, and again, I don't think I've ever articulated this, but I really think that my experience in biology and chemistry, which I thought was a very engineering, mechanical, this is the way the body works, this is what functions, this is chemistry, they have the rules. And I was opened up to much more of an experience of, wow, we have a lot to figure out. There are so many variations that happen. And so when I experience God, how could I ever put God in this box of thinking I know everything and how God works in every single way? And I remember in this conversation, like having had these 2 years of biology and then having this conversation, and it was introduction to religion, that there was just something that clicked. And for all of the like purposeful religious experiences I'd ever had, this cognitive reasoning that I would never fully understand God in a box made me fall deeper in love with God than I'd ever fallen before.
Yeah, it's a never-ending journey that you will go on for the rest of your life, however long that may be, and you'll always be learning something new, and it's just going to be this cool experience, no matter how you look at it. Trying to assume that you've got God figured out.
What I always wonder is, like, I had this experience that other people have, but other people see the enormity and the vastness of the world and get either overwhelmed or, well, nothing matters or God's not here anyway. And I took it the other way of thinking, oh, I don't understand all this. God must be bigger than I've ever encountered before. And I always wonder, like, what is it about either my experience or me that had the very same experience as other people? And I went deep into the rabbit hole of ministry, and they went out of, as far away as possible. And I've never fully understood that.
Yeah, a very similar, almost identical experience, and people can have completely opposing reactions to it because of a variety of factors that kind of shove people in the direction that they go. I mean, we're all wired differently anyway,
so potentially inappropriate for the podcast, but you want to know the funniest moments of my undergrad religion?
Yes, I do.
Yes. So so I had to take 18 hours the last 4 semesters of college to catch up. So I'm taking all these different classes. I'm rushing around. And so switched to religion beginning of my junior year. And in the second year, my advisor tells me, okay, you really need to take there are different kinds of classes you have to take. And this is more of a sociology history class in the religious department. I think you should take this one. And I looked it up and I was like, well, that's really super interesting. And the title of the class is Sects and Cults. And when you say sects, as in sectarian groups, it sounds like sex. So
didn't we talk about this like 3 podcasts ago?
Oh, did we? I don't know. Maybe we did. It's just such a I just remember
one of my favorite things that you've told me is just because it's. Oh yeah, we talked. This was right after Senior Sunday.
Okay.
Because we were talking about our experiences,
wild
and
classes.
You brought up sex and cults, and when you said it first, I was like, "I'm sorry, what? What class is this? And can I sign up?" I think I said that.
I just remember like eating lunch with friends. And I was like, "Oh shoot, I gotta go
To sex
and
and
like,
cults.
what class do you have?" And I was like, "Sex and cults." And I run off, and they reported back later. They were like, "We all just sat around looking at each other like, David, like David's a pretty
What
straight laced guy.
class
What is he doing?"
in? So I want to kind of close with this. Like you brought up at least two things in yesterday's sermon that were discussed in either the last podcast or previous podcast. And I literally want to plug that this podcast gives you previews of what David
that's
will
right.
think about and put in his sermons.
That or I only have 2 sentences to say. That's, I'm already telling the same stories now. Yeah.
I don't know. There's a lot of good stories because you, man, like I did not know that you had hung out with and like talked with Rob Bell and like all these things, and he was such an influential part of my kind of college years of discovering faith and understanding scripture and so like hearing the like, oh yeah, just being like 80 other people were just hanging out with Rob Bell and it's like, that's wild.
Went surfing with him. Yeah.
I missed that part of the story.
I don't think I've told you that part of the story, but yeah, it was this optional like, all right, we're going to break for lunch. If anybody wants to, we're going to go surf on the beach. And I'd never surfed before, but I was like, surfing with Rob Bell and Aaron Rodgers? Yeah, let's do that.
Check.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So if you haven't started listening to Sunday Plus and made that part of your weekly routine,
You really should.
there's a lot of good nuggets that kind of might make their way into Sunday mornings as well. So
Right.
you should definitely tune in regularly. And on that note, I like those stories. So surfing with Rob Bell and Aaron Rodgers, it's a good way to end it.
That's a good way to end it. Yeah.
Catch you next time.
All right. Peace.
Peace.